Today in our 2017 Ford Edge, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the CURT Class 3 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver, part number C13234. So here's what our hitch looks like once we have it installed. It is going to sit right below the bumper, and the cross tube is going to span across, being visible. It's a Class 3 hitch, which means it's going to give us a lot of different options for all different kinds of accessories that are going to be available, because it's going to give us that 2" by 2" receiver tube opening. It's going to be great for ball mounts, bike racks, or even cargo carriers. The way we're going to mount any of our accessories is going to be through the hitch pin hole here on the side. Now it's going to accept a standard 5/8 pin and clip. Now while these aren't included in the kit, you can pick them up on our website at etrailer.com using part number PC3. Our safety chain connection points are going to be a plate style welded to the bottom of the receiver tube, and we're going to have a pretty easy time getting any kind of hooks on and off. Just keep in mind, with really small hooks, you may have a little bit of trouble coming from the side. Our hitch is going to have a 600-pound tongue weight, which is going to be the maximum downward force at the receiver tube. It's also going to have a 4,000-pound gross trailer weight rating, which is the amount it can pull, including the trailer and everything you have loaded on it. Now with those numbers in mind, always double check your Edge's owner's manual to make sure it can handle that amount of weight. The manufacturer does recommend the use of a stabilization strap anytime you're towing any non-trailer loads or any loads that don't have tires on them, like a bike rack or a cargo carrier. I'd like to give you a few measurements that will help you when deciding for accessories for your new hitch, such as a ball mount, a bike rack, or even a cargo carrier. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the outermost edge of the bumper, it's going to be right about 5 inches. Now that measurement is going to come in handy when looking at folding accessories to make sure you have adequate clearance between your bumper and the accessory itself. And from the ground to the inside top edge of the receiver tube opening, that's going to be right about 13 inches. And at that height, I would recommend a bike rack or a cargo carrier with a raised shank. That way you have a little bit more ground clearance. And also keep that measurement in mind when you're finding the right rise or drop for a ball mount to match up to your trailer. So now that we've seen what our hitch looks like and gone over some of the features, let's show you how to get it installed. To begin our installation, we're going to need to lower our exhaust, but before we lower it, I'm going to put a strap up to make sure that it's supported and doesn't hang down too far. So you're just going to want to find a solid point to hook a strap up, and we can adjust the strap once we have everything disconnected. On either side of our muffler, just in front of our tailpipe, we're going to have a rubber isolator and a hanger. I'm going to take a little bit of spray lubricant. I'm going to spray it on the hanger, make it a little bit easier to slide off. Then we can just take a pry bar, and you're going to find something to pry against so that we can slide that rubber hanger off. And we'll do that on the other side as well. And we're going to adjust the strap down so we have a little bit more room to work with in here. Now we're going to have a plastic panel on each side that we're going to have to remove. On the very outside edge behind the tire, we're going to have 2 5.5mm bolts that we're going to pull out. And if we move in towards the center of the car, we're going to have 2 more nuts that are holding them in place as well. And we're going to be using a 10mm socket to pull those out. Then we can pull that panel down and set it aside. Now we're going to have the same panel on the driver's side with the same type of hardware. With those 2 outer panels removed, we're going to have to remove the center panel. Now we're going to have several fasteners going along the back edge here, and those are also going to be that 5.5mm socket. And we're just going to pull that panel away from the back bumper. And the outer edges are going to be held on by those studs that we're holding that 10mm nut on as well. And also right in the center, we're going to have a 10mm nut that's holding it in place. So once we have all that hardware removed, we'll go ahead and pull the panel out and set it aside. Now on the bottom of the frame, we're going to have several holes. We're going to be using the 2 round holes on either side of the farthest back stud. And then on the side of the frame, we're going to have a few more holes, and we're going to be using the furthest back round hole on the side. So our 3 mounting points are going to be right there, here, and here, and now we can work on getting our hardware in place. So we're going to grab our fish wire, we're going to take the coiled end, and we're going to go into the hole towards the front of our car, and we're going to feed it towards the back of the bumper. Now it's going to be really hard to see, but if we come all the way to the back edge, we're going to find the edge of the frame rail here. And once we move in, there's going to be a hole at the end of the frame where our pull wire should come out. So we can kind of just reach in. They take a little bit of finesse and wiggling that wire around. We can get our pull wire to come out. Now it's important to leave the tail end of where we put it in. So I'm going to put a bend in it so that it won't go into the frame. Then we're going to take our square spacer block, feed it over the coiled end, and we're going to take one of our 1/2-inch carriage bolts and thread it on. We're going to feed our hardware up into that channel in the frame. Then we can pull on our pull wire until our hardware drops through. Now we're going to repeat that for all of the other mounting locations to mount our hitch up. And we'll repeat that on the driver's side as well. Now with an extra set of hands, we can get our hitch in place. You're going to want to pass the pull wires through the hitch to the corresponding holes. You can lift it up, and remove the pull wire, and on each side we want to get at least one flange nut in place to help support the hitch. Just want to make sure that bolt doesn't drop back into the frame. Once we have one nut on each side and the hitch will support itself, we can work on getting the rest of the hardware in place. I'm going to come back with a 3/4 inch socket, and I'm going to snug up all my hardware. We can come back with that same 3/4 inch socket, and we're going to torque all of our hardware down to the specified amount in the instructions. And we're going to repeat that for all of our remaining hardware. We are going to have to trim the underbody panels in order to get them back in place. I already went ahead and marked out the area that we're going to need to trim, and basically this is the driver's side panel, and if we hold it up, this is about this way it was sitting in the vehicle. So where those 3 holes are in there, we're going to have our 2 mounting holes that go over the studs. We want to leave that one that's closest to the front of the vehicle, so get as close as you can to where that washer was on there. And we're going to trim straight across and then straight down, cutting this entire area out. So just take a pair of snips and just follow along that line and cut that section out. So now we can go ahead and check to make sure that it is going to clear the hitch, and if it does, we're going to trim the passenger side panel the same way. Now that we have both sides trimmed, we can put it back in place. The easiest way is going to be starting on the outside edge where the wheel well is, and then just rotating it up. And you want to make sure that that back corner gets back onto that stud, and then we can put our hardware back in. Line up the panel so we can get our screws in place. And we'll do that on the other side as well. Now our center panel that we took out is going to need to be trimmed as well. If we flip it over and we find the end piece, I already marked out where it's going to need to be trimmed. It's just going to have this small corner piece that we're going to cut out, but we want to make sure that we leave the mounting location intact. So we're going to get real close to that, come over, and then make a vertical cut. And again, I'm just going to be using a pair of tin snips to cut out that section. And we're going to do that on both sides of our center panel here. So with our panel trimmed, we can go ahead and put it back in place. We're going to line it up, coming from the back side, and then we can get it in place. Maybe a little bit difficult because the hitch is there now, but it's going to take a little bit of work, and we can get our panel in. To make it easier to get that center section in place, you might want to loosen these 4 10mm bolts on the heat shield that's in the very top of the muffler. That way we have a little bit more room to get that panel in the back, and then we can swing it over the heat shield to get everything in place. So we're going to replace the nut that was in the center, holding it up. As well as the two on the side. Then we can get all the smaller fasteners in the very back section. We can raise our exhaust back up and slide it back onto the rubber hangers. Then finally we can remove the support strap. And that'll finish up your look at the CURT Class 3 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver, part number C13234 on our 2017 Ford Edge.